Well, it's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Glen Campbell.
That don't impress me much.
Before Shania Twain, before Garth Brooks, there was Glen Campbell.
I am so afraid of dying.
It's perfectly clear that Glen was the first country crossover artist.
And I need you more than want you.
He dominated the pop and country charts like no one before him.
Male Vocalist of the Year,
Glen Campbell. Oh, you should get her out there!
It was obviously my destiny to get on TV and sell a lot of records. And when all I ever wanted to do was go around the country and play and sing.
Glen had this unbelievable period of enormous success and great sales.
You don't realize how many hit songs he had.
Glen Campbell knew how to cut hit records.
Southern Nights. Have you ever noticed Southern Nights?
But Glen Campbell squandered his talents, and his life became a country song cliche. Hard living, high times, and fast women.
Things happen in your life that you can't give account of when you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
There's some talk about the wedding.
What wedding, Tom?
I've never really had any thoughts about, oh wow, Dad's dating Tanya Tucker. You know, I just wanted my dad to be happy.
He fell from grace and fell hard.
There's a few times I worked with him where coke was going. It's too much, too much.
When I was laying there in Vegas that time, I thought I was going to die from OD and cocaine.
Then Glen walked a hard road back from ruin.
There's been a load of compromise on the road to my horizon.
It's amazing the experiences that God has let me go through in my life, musically and otherwise.
Like them rhinestone cowboys.
Now, the success, sins, and ultimate salvation of the Rhinestone Cowboy.
Everyone who is anyone in music is here tonight. All right? If they were to drop a bomb on MTV on this place right now, Glen Campbell would be the hottest dude in show business tomorrow.
There was a time when it wasn't a joke. Just 8 years before Eddie Murphy got laughs at his expense, Glen Campbell was #1 on the pop and country charts for the second time in 2 years. For 10 years, from 1967 to 1977, Glen Campbell was the one laughing, all the way to the bank.
I've been walking these streets so long, singing the same old song.
In a career spanning 5 decades, he's charted 73 top 40 hits, and in 1969, he sold more records than the Beatles.
Where hustle's the name of the game, and nice guys get washed away like the snow and the rain.
Glen Campbell made music history.
I got to go out with Ricky Nelson, you know, and see what that was like. I got to go out with the Beach Boys, be one of the Beach Boys. That was a big thrill.
But he went on to become Glen Campbell, you know, and, the Wichita lineman.
I am a lineman for the county.
And then to fall into such an incredibly successful television show then, I really never planned none of it. It just all seemed to happen.
You get a house in the hills, you're paying everyone's bills. They tell you that you're gonna go far.
But for Glen, alcohol, drug abuse, and tabloid scandal happened too, taking a heavy toll on his life, his career, and his reputation.
I would say from 1976 to 1980, the drugs and alcohol took over.
I found out on our very first date that he had an alcohol problem, and soon found out he also had a drug problem.
Everything started going straight to hell. It was like I'd been blessed, and all of a sudden I was cursed.
Back in the 60s, you would have never thought that Glen Campbell in any way would ever get involved with anything more than a glass of beer, because he just wasn't that kind of a kid.
We were so poor when I was a little boy that I came up as a migrant worker from Arkansas with Dad and my 2 older brothers to pick tomatoes for 10 cents a hamper. Believe you me, I like this a heck of a lot better.
It was Dixieland, that's where I was born. It was early on one April morning.
Glen Travis Campbell was born April 22, 1936 in Billstown, Arkansas, just down the two-lane from the tiny crossroads town of Delight. Glen was the seventh son of Wes and Carrie Campbell. Glen's dad was a sharecropper with 12 children to support. The rural South was devastated by the Great Depression, and Papa Wes worked hard to wrest a living from the bottomland along the Little Missouri River.
Before I had to start going to the bottoms and, like, you know, chopping cotton and doing all that, I would work with Mama in the garden. If we grew it, we ate it. If Daddy shot it, Mama cooked it. It didn't matter what it was.
His second year of life was nearly his last. One day, toddler Glen fell into a marshy creek behind his house.
And I heard Mother screaming, and she was just wringing her hands, saying, "Oh my God, Glen is drowned." And he was just as blue as he could be. I got up and I pushed behind his shoulder blade like that, and water just started gushing out of his little mouth. And boy, he said, "Wow!" He started crying, and I knew then he was all right.
We was the happiest family that ever was when he was keeping time with the radio that night.
Glen was only 4 years old when his father bought him a $5 guitar.
This was one of those mail order jobs, you know. I learned the basic chords from Dad. And then as I got a little older, Uncle Boo started showing me how to play lead.
He wasn't very old when we started picking together. He'd become a pretty good guitar picker by the time he was 9 or 10, I guess.
Young Glen was a natural. He dropped out of the 7th grade to gig with Uncle Boo in Wyoming.
It was like, you know, the adventure of Huckleberry Finn, only this was Glen and his uncle and a guy that he knew from up in Wyoming.
In 1952, 16-year-old Glen quit school for good when his uncle Dick Bills hired him to play with his band in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A year later, Glen was playing the Chesterfield Club when he met 15-year-old Diane Kirk, the mayor's daughter.
I got her pregnant.
Glen and a pregnant Diane were quickly and quietly married before a judge in 1956.
It wasn't a month and a half after that till the baby was preborn, and didn't make it. I really took that hard, but Debbie was born about 9-10 months after that. She was a little premature also.
Glen and Diane's second child survived. Their marriage didn't.
We were together, must have been 2 years. And Debbie, she was just a baby when we split up.
I have a memory of my dad picking me up, and I remember playing gin with him in the back of a station wagon. But I don't have a lot of memories of spending a lot of time with him when I was younger.
I got them weary, weary, lonesome blues, feeling lonesome, about to cry.
By 1958, 22-year-old Glen had lost a wife and daughter and buried a son. He played through his loneliness in honky-tonks across the Southwest. Glen was playing the hitching post in Albuquerque when he met a local beautician named Billy Nunley in 1959.
In those days, so to speak, you weren't one to go out and like horse around, you know. Sex wasn't as prevalent as they say. Yeah, and so we got married, and it was great.
Glen and Billy got married in September of '59.
My goal was to go to California. In 1960, Billy and I just packed the car and took off to the big city. We did a little starving at first, but I got on a tour with the Champs as a champ.
The Champs had recently scored a hit with Tequila, and Glen toured with them across the Midwest. But his virtuoso guitar playing soon led to session work in L.A.
Glen and I first met on record sessions. We played together on the Beach Boys sessions, we played together on the Phil Spector sessions, Jan and Dean sessions. He was probably, as far as I'm concerned, probably the most in-demand guitar player in town.
The wild thing about Glen Campbell is that he did not read any music, but he played such incredible solos that everybody wanted Glen playing one of those incredible solos.
Money started rolling in. It was just phenomenal.
The money eased the arrival of Glen and Billy's first child, a daughter named Kelly, born in October of '61. That same year, Glen hired accountant Stan Schneider.
Well, the first year, he made $1,900, the first tax return that I did. The very next year, he went into six figures.
There is someone walking behind you. Turn around, look at me.
In December of '61, Glen's debut single, Turn Around, Look at Me, peaked at number 62 on the pop chart.
People in the industry would always talk about Glen Campbell, especially from the West Coast, because he was such a great player. He was a real musician, he was a real singer, and he was a real nice guy. How can you miss?
Recognizing his potential, Capitol Records signed 26-year-old Glen to a recording contract in 1962.
Glen was destined to be a star, and I think a lot of us felt he's going to go a little farther than just sitting here sidelining with us or just making records.
By 1963, Glen was one of the top session guitarists in Los Angeles. In that year alone, he played on 586 sessions.
To go to a Jan and Dean session and then go to a Dean Martin session, I was just floating out of one heaven right into another heaven.
In 1965, he even became a Beach Boy, subbing on tour for Brian Wilson.
He joined our group for about 6 months period of time, and he played the bass, not the guitar, which he was known for. He's an excellent guitarist. Put on Brian's shirt, got the pants hemmed, and away we go. And he was a blast.
It just blew my mind. Can you imagine? You gotta dance, dance on the bell, and it was just. I was so worried about it, but when we went out on stage, it didn't make any difference anyway, because the audience was louder than the band.
The first night they played in Dallas, Glen didn't run and get in a limousine like the rest of them did. He just kind of stood on the stage and let the girl just come and get him. They tore his watch off and scratched him. And boy, when they played Oklahoma City the next night, he was the first one in the limousine, I guarantee you.
Coming up, the Smothers Brothers turn an Arkansas country boy into a superstar.
The Glen Campbell Show.
Everybody knew who you were. Everybody knew your songs. Everybody wanted an autograph. And that happened to me literally overnight.
And later, the Rhinestone Cowboy sings the blues.
The icing on the cake was, are you going to release that stupid cowboy song as a single? And that was literally the whole end of the marriage, everything.
When Behind the Music continues. Glen Campbell was one of the hottest studio musicians on the West Coast in the fall of 1965, but his own recording career had yet to catch fire. His cover of Donovan's Universal Soldier went to number 45 on the singles chart. It was a modest hit, but by '66, Capitol Records was ready to drop Glen from the label.
He knows he shouldn't kill, but he knows he always will.
And one great producer named Ken Nelson, who ran all the country music, he spoke up and said, Glen has a lot of talent. He says, I think you should keep him on the label. They said, well, Al DeLore is a new producer. Let's try it with Al and see what happens.
I said, I'd just like to find some songs that I want to sing and go in and cut them. And lo and behold, I heard Gentle on My Mind on the radio with John Hartford.
It's not clinging to the rocks and ivy planted on their columns now that bind me.
And when I heard this song, I went crazy. So I raced out in the studio on a break and told Glen, I said, this is the one. This is the definitive song that's going to put us on the map.
That you're moving on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind.
I think Gentle on My Mind was the first record that he made that really showed mass appeal. That this guy and this song was something special.
But it was Glen's next single, written by a 19-year-old songwriter named Jimmy Webb, that made him a star.
By the time I get to Phoenix, she'll be rising.
In December of '67, By the Time I Get to Phoenix hit number 26 on the pop charts.
She'll find the note I left hanging on her door.
It also became the number 2 country song in America. The Glen Campbell phenomenon had begun.
Male vocalist of the year, Glen Campbell.
The entertainer of the year, Mr. Glen Campbell.
Oh, and she'll cry just to think I'd really leave her.
It was as though one of my songs had finally been captured, like some rare animal. Like, I believe I also subliminally in some way realized, hey, I've found my guy. I've found the guy who's going to sing my songs.
I would really go.
While his first hits went up the charts, Glen continued to play studio sessions for acts like the Smothers Brothers.
And we happened to have the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour in the old days of television. When you had a time spot, part of the deal was you got the summer spot too. So I immediately approached their people to see if you'd be interested in maybe hosting our summer show. And we ended up with the Summer Brothers Smothers Show starring Glen Campbell.
The Summer Brothers Smothers Show was on TV in the summer of '68.
Right now I'd like to meet another hard-riding, fast-shooting cowboy friend of mine, Mr. Dickie Smothers. Over here, Mr. Tommy Smothers.
We were told by CBS that, boy, if you boys, if you can make this show go, you get the numbers, you will get the first available time slot to put the Glen Campbell Show on.
The summer replacement show changed Glen's life.
And everybody knew who you were, everybody knew your songs, everybody wanted an autograph. And that happened to me literally overnight.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce a friend of ours who hosted our summer show and did so well that this coming January, he's going to have a show of his own on CBS called The Glen Campbell Show.
For the county, and I drive the main road.
I do remember very vividly getting a phone call from him saying, we need a follow-up to by the time I get to Phoenix, can you write us a song?
And when he played me Wichita Lineman, I was just totally flabbergasted.
And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time.
That's my favorite ballad that I've ever recorded.
And the Wichita lineman is still on the line.
Wichita Lineman climbed to number 3 on the pop chart and topped the country chart in November of '68.
When you can ever get a follow-up hit that's bigger than your first smash hit, that's like perfect programming.
It was also perfect programming when on January 29th, 1969, the Glen Campbell Goodtime Hour debuted on CBS.
Well, it's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Glen Campbell.
Glen was the first performer with a country background that really appealed to the mainstream audience and sold records in the millions.
Gold and platinum albums were piling up in our office here. He wouldn't come off the golf course to come in and pick up a platinum album.
My good friend, Mr. Andy Griffin. Ladies and gentlemen, John Wayne.
Everybody knew him, loved him.
Oh, how dare you!
Glen was one of the chosen few.
It was obviously my destiny to get on TV and sell a lot of records. And when all I ever wanted to do was go around the country and play and sing.
Coming up, the Rhinestone Cowboy's hard ride to the top.
I think Rhinestone Cowboy sort of made him into an icon. put him on Mount Rushmore or something.
There's been a load of compromising, and boy, I didn't realize when I said that how much load of compromising there would be.
And for Glen, the dark times begin.
Everybody thought, well, he stole somebody's wife. You know, he didn't steal anybody's wife.
If you're lying and you're living a lie, boy, there is no place to go but down, and that's where it'll end up.
When Behind the Music continues.
I am so afraid of dying.
1969 was Glen Campbell's year. By the time I Get to Phoenix won the Grammy for Album of the Year, and his hit television show had rapidly transformed a poor sharecropper's son into one of the world's biggest pop stars.
I still see her standing by the water.
While the Vietnam War raged in the spring of '69, Glen scored another crossover victory with Galveston.
I clean my gun, dream of Galveston.
Jimmy Webb's anti-war ballad rose to number 4 on the pop charts and was a number 1 country hit.
I was definitely against the war in Vietnam and all that stuff. And Glen was of a more conservative stripe. It says a lot for our love of making music together, that over the years that mellowed into a very fine friendship. I'm very proud of all his songs, and he's the reason that I'm proud of him.
Glen was that type of artist that always found the great songs.
He used to say to me, he said, Tom, you know, I've got a gift. I can just look at a song and I know they're here.
At Galveston.
Glen's next hit was his big screen debut in the summer of '69 when he co-starred in True Grit with his friend John Wayne.
Glen Campbell in his first big screen role.
A little earlier, I gave some thought to stealing a kiss from you.
A lot of us were very happy for Glen, but we kind of saw Hollywood sort of taking Glen over a little bit.
It took its toll, you know. My ex-wife built a house up on the hill that was pretty astronomical. 17,500 square feet. What do you do with that many square feet?
But by the end of '72, as Glen's huge new house rose up in the Hollywood Hills, his record sales began to decline.
There's no way you could sustain those multi-million selling albums. So his sales did level off. His career leveled off a little during that period of time.
Then after 4 hit seasons, CBS canceled the Glen Campbell Goodtime Hour.
They felt they wanted to go to a more sophisticated audience and felt that Glen was only appealing to the middle America between the coasts.
And Glen kind of got glossed over. His show should have run a lot longer than it did.
Well, it's knowing that your door's always open and your path is free to walk.
Though he was off the air, Glen was in demand on stage, headlining concerts in Las Vegas and around the world. And though he had first made a name for himself as a guitarist, Glen was now playing less and less guitar.
I was told, don't go out with your guitar in your hand, you look too country. So I was listening to these people. My ex-manager was trying to get me to do like the Sinatra scene with the tux, you know, and by the time I get to Phoenix, you know, that routine. And it really threw me off for a while.
Comedian Lonnie Shore began opening for Glen in 1974.
When I first met him, that's when his marriage to Billy was not... It was okay, I guess, but then I'm sure it wasn't that stable.
Once the sun did shine, good Lord, it felt so fine.
In fact, Glen's 15-year marriage to Billy was in serious trouble.
We drifted away, you know. That's just the way it was. We just drifted away.
And then the darkness fell.
His release was going out and performing If he were having a bad time at home, maybe I could tell that. I could tell through his music. I could tell the way he was singing.
With his marriage on the rocks and his recording career in the doldrums, Glen kept up a heavy concert schedule. He also began to do some heavy drinking.
I was going out and drinking, Glenlivet scotch and not a lot of soda. And I was quickly becoming an alcoholic.
I always felt that he had constrained himself and controlled his private life to such a degree that it was almost like something had to break loose somewhere.
If you're not getting your kicks on Route 66, you weren't getting your kicks, you know what I mean? What I was doing during that, 72, 73, 74 period, I was touring the world. I wasn't looking for songs. You gotta have good songs if you're gonna have hit records. And when I heard Rhinestone Cowboy, it just blew me away.
I've been walking these streets so long, singing the same old song. I know every crack in these dirty sidewalks of Broadway.
Rhinestone Cowboy became Glen's comeback song and a milestone in recording history, topping both the pop and country charts in the summer of '75.
I think Rhinestone Cowboy sort of made him into an icon, put him on Mount Rushmore or something.
On the road to my horizon.
And I really just kind of rode on the crest of that to forget everything that was happening to Glen Campbell personally.
But while Rhinestone Cowboy revived Glen's recording career, the song could not save his marriage.
The icing on the cake was, are you going to release that stupid cowboy song as a single? That was Rhinestone Cowboy, and I said, yes, I am. She said, well, you've lost it, And that was literally the whole end of the marriage, the life together, everything. What can you say after that?
You get a house in the hills, you're paying everyone's bills, and they tell you that you're gonna go far.
That same year, Glen had a top 20 pop single with Country Boy, You Got Your Feet in L.A.
Is that who you really are?
He also started using cocaine.
Cocaine would pop you up and you could have another, glass of scotch. And it really got bad for about 4 or 5 years.
You take alcohol and drugs too, they don't mix.
There's a few times I worked with him where coke was going. It's too much, too much.
It's like the same thing that was going on with Elvis. There were a lot of people around him who were feeding directly from that trough. As long as the guy is walking around and he's making it to the gigs and he's playing by the time I get to Phoenix, most people, I think, wouldn't say anything until it's too late.
What should have been a great year for Glen grew darker when Billy filed for divorce on September 24th, 1975, just 5 days after their 16th anniversary.
It's really hard. This woman was in my life from the time that I was a youngster, and now I'm just supposed to sorry, you're not married to my dad anymore, so I can't have anything to do with you. And that was really hard because her and Dad's divorce was not real pleasant.
By the end of '75, Glen began dating Sarah Bard, the estranged wife of his friend, singer-songwriter Mac Davis.
It was wonderful at first, with the exception of all the controversy,
Everybody thought, well, he stole somebody's wife. He didn't steal anybody's wife.
Mac and Sarah were separating. Bill and I were separating. I guess we just got together to cry on each other's shoulder, and it went from there.
Glen and Billy's divorce became final in the summer of '76. The next year, Glen married Sarah in Lake Tahoe.
Now and forever, let it remain.
Glen's passion for Sarah was rivaled only by his growing appetite for alcohol and cocaine.
His weight must have gone. He looked like he'd been in prison. And I told him, I said, what's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong.
You could not tell Glen. Cocaine was one of the most seductive drugs. I said, man, you shut up. That's my business. And he was very religious at the same time. He said, one time was a joke. He said, I'm a drug tester for the Lord. I'll make sure this is good.
But while Glen's drug and alcohol problems continued to mount, he got even higher on the charts.
Southern nights, have you ever noticed southern nights?
Southern Nights repeated the success of Rhinestone Cowboy by topping both the country and pop charts in the spring of '77.
Whistling tunes that you know and love so.
That summer, Elvis Presley died. Glen was moved by the death of a man he had known for over 20 years.
But I used to go up and see Elvis quite a bit, and he was always playing Glen's records.
But if there was a warning in the King's drug-addled demise, Glen Campbell didn't get the message. Coming up, Glen's affair with Tanya Tucker tears up the tabloids.
It was just a relationship made from hell, I think, you know.
And the Rhinestone Cowboy hits rock bottom.
When I was laying there in Vegas that time, I thought I was going to die from OD and cocaine.
When Behind the Music continues.
My idea. Now you can take all of the money that you made and put it in a jar.
By the fall of 1978, it had been over a year since Glen Campbell had a #1 hit with Southern Nights. Can You Fool reached number 38 on the pop charts.
Take all of the medicine you need till you find out who you are.
But it was destined to be Glen's last top 40 single.
Why that woman wanna be so cruel, and you just can't forget her. Can you fool?
Glen at that point was basically unplayable on top 40 radio. Eventually it became just openly contemptuous. Play a Glen Campbell record? You're out of your mind.
Faithless love, like a river flow.
Glen's recording career was a shadow of its former glory. His relationship to Sarah had also changed for the worse.
We were drinking and cocaine, and nothing lasts when you're doing that.
Love, where nobody goes. Faithless love, it will find you. Wrap them chilly arms around you.
Sarah left Glen 3 weeks after the birth of their first and only child. Their 3-year marriage ended when she filed for divorce in February of 1980.
The marriage was gone, my son, Dylan, everything that I had in L.A. And that's when I picked it up and moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
Glen was now on his own, alone with his cocaine addiction.
His behavior started to become erratic.
I would see him on stage, and he would say things, and I would cringe.
I was just out there, and I was saying, exposing things. I said things I shouldn't be saying on stage, my word.
To deal with Glen during those years was very difficult for all of us who were around him.
Dealing with Glen became even more difficult in the spring of 1980 when he began a 15-month affair with country singer Tanya Tucker. Glen was 44 years old. Tanya was literally half his age.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
They would get along for one day, and the next day we would have a fight. But it went on for a year, on again, off again.
That was her pursuing Glen Campbell. You know, and I was gullible enough to go right along with it. You know, I'm not saying it's all her fault. Sure, it takes two to tango, but it was like fire and water mixing there.
Glen's divorce from Sarah became final in December of 1980. He was already thinking about getting married again.
Are you scared of it at all?
No, I'm not.
He's not scared at all. I'm scared to death.
Why? Well, I guess maybe he's used to it. I don't know. This is my first time.
Right, I got a cauliflower heart.
I think anybody that's doing drugs or an alcoholic or anything like that, they're definitely walking wounded. I was. You're scared of everything and you don't want to get hurt anymore. And your life just goes to hell. It goes to hell in a handbasket.
And then we start reading and hearing all these unbelievable things. It's just not Glen.
According to the tabloids, in Tanya's 1997 book, their wild affair got violent, and Glen hit Tanya during some of their notorious fights. But Glen denies it.
I never hurt anybody or didn't do anything like that, but I hurt myself.
His lowest point came when one night in Las Vegas, Glen freebased cocaine.
I didn't know what freebasing was, and I did it once.
For 6 hours, his heart pounded as he lay face down, begging God to let him live.
I can probably say that was a blessing for me, because it didn't kill me. And I realized how bad it really was.
I knew there had to be a better way than the way I was taking myself.
The best thing that ever happened to him at that period was when he met Kim.
I met Kim during the Tanya Tucker thing.
We met, and it was love at first sight, for me anyway.
In the summer of '81, Glen met a Radio City Music Hall rockette named Kim Woolen on a blind date.
I didn't know he'd been married before. I didn't know how many times. I didn't know how many children he had. That was one of the first questions I asked him is, do you have any children? And he said 5. When I started dating Glen, and I first realized that he had a real drug and alcohol problem, I tried to talk to him about it, but he was in total denial.
Meanwhile, Glen and Tanya's tumultuous affair was in its death throes in the fall of '81.
It was over with Tucker, and I knew it was.
Glen went to see Tanya in Las Vegas to break it off with her once and for all.
And just said goodbye, and I'll dig you later, and told her parents bye.
Then he paid a visit to his friend, Loretta Lynn.
I said, boy, Loretta, have you heard anything about my life the last year? And she said, well, who hadn't, Glen? You know, you've been... And Loretta, in her own sweet way, she kind of opened my eyes to a few things. You know, you got to find somebody that you can get along with.
For Glen, that somebody was Kim Woolen.
I think I was readily accepted by most of Glen's family. Most of the family felt that any change was a good change.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Glen's redemption began in the waters of a frigid creek on December 22nd, 1981.
We went to Arkansas, and we had both rededicated our lives to God, and we wanted to be baptized.
Glen's brother Lyndall was then a Church of Christ preacher in Delight.
I sat him down and sat he and Kim both down, and I talked to him about 3 hours. I said, are you ready to change your life? He said, yeah. So I take them down to this creek right down here.
And Lyndall immersed us.
And Glen don't like cold water at all. That you can hear that boy scream for a half a mile.
Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer.
46-year-old Glen and 24-year-old Kim were married on October 25th, 1982. It was Glen's 4th marriage, and number 4 would prove the charm.
Wow. It seemed like yesterday.
In seasons of distress and grief, my soul has often found relief.
She's a strong, very spiritually grounded person who I think just grabbed a hold of him and said, Glen, I'm not going to let you destroy yourself.
In dealing with his drug and alcohol problems, to deal with that within the covenant of marriage was helpful for him because I wasn't going to go away.
She really stuck right by his side through all of that. It was pretty rocky at the very beginning.
'Cause I was lost.
I got rid of the cocaine, but I kept hitting the hooch a little, you know.
I was blind, but now I see.
Do you miss not being Glen Campbell in headlines, in the limelight?
No, I don't miss that. Of course not. I wish it could be back as I was when I was playing at the Hitching Post in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, where I was just me and it wasn't all this
rhubarb that goes on around you. It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk.
Glen was almost back from hell, but he still had one more step to take.
Makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your counter.
It took until our daughter was born for the alcohol to go.
Finally, after Ashley was born, I quit drinking. I'd prayed about it and prayed about it, prayed about it, and I got delivered.
When Glen was cleaning up his act, I spoke to him all the time about it was great to have him back, almost, reminding him of the things that he did during the dark years, because I never wanted him to go back to it again.
I have sung for kings and queens all around the world. I've romanced millions with my guitar and a love song.
I think he really has found religion, because sometimes it takes that real terrible dump for you to realize what you'd better do with your life. Either that or go blow your brains out, and he's not about to blow his brains out.
I've seen some high times, I've paid some dues.
What I'm thankful for is that I lived through it and that I can talk about it now. I have been to hell. Don't go there. It's not a good place.
Coming up, Glen Campbell's life and career reconsidered.
They took a poll of the 100 greatest singles of all time. From what he remembered, he was on 16 of that 100.
When Behind the Music continues.
It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk.
In 1994, over 3 decades after he began his recording career, Glen Campbell was back in the news with an unflinching tell-all autobiography.
I just wanted to do one and get the truth out there. Don't pull no punches to say this was this way and this was that way, and that's the way it was. If I had to do it over, I probably wouldn't have wrote it. Well, I felt kind of embarrassed. You know, boy, I really did that, you know.
Glen made peace with his storied past and moved on to a new chapter in his life. Nowadays, he plays about 100 concerts a year with an accent on playing.
He's kind of gone back to his roots. He loves the guitar. He's always been a great guitar player. Why not do what you love?
I feel whole out there now. I don't feel like half of me is missing. That's the way I felt before. If I had to just go out and hold a microphone and sing, I probably wouldn't go do shows. And playing that guitar and singing was always the most satisfying to me of anything I've ever done.
Hard-working guy. Loves his guitar, loves music, and certainly loves his family now.
Glen is a wonderful father. I wasn't around when he raised his other children. I expect that he had to be gone a lot because of his career and everything. And he's gone a lot now for us too, but he's probably home more than the other children had experienced.
And now, being able to spend this time with him, we have a relationship, something I've always wanted, and it's a great one.
I bless the day I found you. I want to stay around you.
It's really ironic what God has done, because I was the child that was hardly ever around my dad, and now I'm one of the only ones that's always with him. And so it's just come full circle for me, I think. Dad has so many fans that have just followed him everywhere. The older people that grew up with Wichita linemen, by the time I get to Phoenix, you know, they have younger people in their family that probably come along with them, you know, just to see what it's all about. And then they sit there and find out what a phenomenal musician he is, and all the songs that they really do now recollect once they've sat there and heard them.
Galveston, oh Galveston, I still hear your sea waves crashing.
I mean, here we are today, so many years later, talking about these records. They're going to last forever.
And if you play them today, right now today, they still sound great. That's the sign of, number one, a great record. More importantly, a great talent, a great artist.
Then dream of Galveston.
He never stopped, never diminished his respect for his instrument, never lost his chops.
When it's all said and done, if that's what people are going to say about you, that you are one of the best players, best singers, and just best people, then that's a lot, I think.
I believe that as a talent, he's unparalleled. And I think that history will look at him with much more favor than perhaps he's been regarded in the last few years, when I think he has undeservedly sort of had the limelight taken away from him.
I look back on it and I go, I'm so blessed to be where I am now and go through what I did, and trying to be humble, you know.
And the Wichita lineman, he's still